This may possibly be one of the very last true crypto bull run videos you need to watch in the 2025 bull run, because I'm going to cover so much in this video that you won't really need any more evidence, at least as it stands right now, that this thing has the highest possible points to still come. I'm talking about the gains we've been waiting for. And I know that's hard to hear when your portfolio and when the market is down. Okay, it's literally the opposite of what you want to hear. Your confirmation bias wants me to tell you it's down, get used to it. But the charts don't lie. And usually when the general population are in complete agreement that things are at their worst and going to get worse, that's when things do a complete 180. Let me just remind all of you who were around the last few years, back in October of 2023, when everyone, including myself, thought prices would get cheaper, hold on, the worst is still coming, and then Bitcoin went from $26,000 and it went up to $73,000 not long after. The markets, the whales, the market makers, the guys behind the scenes have a way to do the opposite of the current sentiment. And I know things are going to get better here soon. Do you want to know why? The honest truth? The honest truth is because I'm getting sick of this myself. Okay, I'm tired, I'm bullish, but I'm tired. And this is a way I know even some of the more experienced people in this market are tired as well. And that means the best is likely right around the corner. But guys, before we get into it, don't forget, if you find yourself enjoying this video and thinking to yourself, you know what? This might be the very last bull run video I do need to watch of this year. Hit a like, subscribe. And with that being said, I can confidently and actually kind of enthusiastically, I know it sounds kind of crazy, tell you fear and greed is right now in pure fear. Actually, technically, it's extreme fear. And like I said, I know it is because I'm feeling like that myself right now. But again, let me remind you, I actually said this is a bullish thing. This isn't bearish. What's bearish is extreme greed, because that leaves only one direction for prices to go. Extreme fear, when everyone's pooped out and absolutely tired, that means that price only really has one way to go. And I know because I've been around this market long enough. But that all being said, let's get into some of the bullish catalysts here. And I want to start macro first and then move into altcoins very quickly. And so first of all, I want to address the elephant in the room. QT, QE, what's happening in the United States? Well, they've actually been unwinding their balance sheets, so basically in QT, since June of 2022. And in this period, in this last few years, Bitcoin has 5.5x. Bit of a head scratcher for those of you saying that we need to be in QE to have a bull run. Obviously, something disagrees, and we'll get to this in just a second. But with great positive news recently coming out that we're likely going to be going neutral here in the short term, about June of this year, then based on history, it seems that we are still likely going to have a pretty good bull run, considering, of course, the fact, as I just mentioned, that we went up a 5.5x since the US started unwinding their balance sheet. So, I wonder why. Bitcoin is not an American asset. It is not native and single-handedly can only be used in America. It is a global commodity. Now, that's, of course, now applicable to global liquidity. And this is a cycle now I think many people are catching on to. I myself have been researching this more and more recently here. The 4-year global liquidity cycle plays out over and over and over again. And it seems that Bitcoin over the course of time has begun to sync up more and more, particularly here. This is why we have gone up a 5.5x from the lows in June of 2022. Every single cycle usually has a pretty bullish couple years in global liquidity, as I think we will continue to have here. So what you're looking at here is global liquidity overlaid on Bitcoin's price, and I've put a 46-day lead on this. Now, I'm not going to take credit for this. This actually came from Colin Talks Crypto, who's the same creator of this amazing indicator, the CBBI indicator. I'll leave some links down below. Highly recommend you follow him. He created a script for the global M2 money supply. All I've done here is just backtrack and copied this, as well as copy the 46-day lead as well. And if you actually have a look at some of the similarities on this, I mean, in the previous cycles, we were kind of synced, but over the course of time, like I said, it got more and more close to each other. But, kind of in the last, I'd say, couple years, this has gotten really, really heavily correlated. Since about late 2022, I would even say more than a 65% correlation, because you can just overlay these two charts here and you can see that everything kind of lines up. Not perfectly, of course, nothing ever is that easy, but it's very close. And like Colin pointed out, if you actually apply a 46-day lead to this, you kind of can, roughly speaking, line them up perfectly, but also therefore forecast what may happen next. And given that this sort of drop here in global liquidity was forecastable, then could that mean that in the next 9 days, when this massive expansionary period happens here for global liquidity, this 18% increase, could Bitcoin move up quite a lot? Well, if it's going to happen, if you have a look at the previous sort of pump over here, where Bitcoin went from a low of 54,000 up to a high of 110,000, considering this move here particularly is about half, or about give or take 40% of that particular move, we could actually see Bitcoin go from about 30 to 50% from this point in time. So like I said, it's never going to line up perfectly. There's always macro events that will push the highs higher and the lows lower. But again, using a tool like this and using a forecast like this, it may actually help you, make some of these swing trades, or of course have a much more broader outlook. As long as global liquidity is going up, as long as, the whole world, the economy at large is looking brighter, then of course it's probably going to increase the price of Bitcoin, as we'll soon now see with this, particularly looking at the United States economy here with ISM's PMI index. All this index really is a way that we can judge and forecast what the next month is going to look like in the US economy based on a survey done for some of the top businesses in the United States. Now, this is weighed differently, and there's a whole bunch of different individual indices used to come together to have this much broader index that we're using right now. Things like production, and also even time to take customers' delivery. Like, a lot of this stuff is considered, which actually, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense. So I've removed my big head from the screen here because essentially I want you guys to see this as easily and clearly as possible. Looking at analyzing what we're seeing on our screen, because this is an index, a middle ground score of 50 right here is essentially neutral. Anything above a score of 50 is what's called expanding, which is, of course, a good thing. Anything beneath this line is contraction, which typically is a bad thing. So, of course, as we expand and this line does go up, this means that some of those businesses I referenced earlier, particularly the larger ones in the United States, they're finding that the deliveries to customers here are actually getting longer, which means that obviously they have a lot of interest in their products. The stock in their warehouses are constantly flooding through the inventory. And a lot of these sort of things that go into a supply chain and the overall business itself are looking like people are buying and buying and buying. And that, of course, is an indication that the economy is booming. As you can see here in the previous cycles, we always have bull runs towards the top of this expansionary period. And over the course of time, this has just gotten tighter and tighter. This has actually even gotten so close to actually timing the exact bottoms. You can see here in these red dots to the Bitcoin bottoms. So, of course, what does that mean for the future price? Well, as long as this line continues to break above where it is right now, which is pretty much just above neutral, then I do see things getting better, particularly because Donald Trump is in administration. Love him or hate him, he's treating the United States as a business, which it technically is. He's even introducing the world's first gold card, which you can buy for $5 million. So the rich guys can come in, pretty much fast track their way to a citizenship and essentially bring on some of their businesses to the United States. So look, he's playing 4D chess, and this index is a great way that we can actually have a little bit of an idea at what his actual, even these tariffs are doing to the economy. We initially think these tariffs are an immediate bad thing, and by the way, they are coming into effect here in the very, very short term. But this index score here, while it might seem negative to us because the initial thought is that it's going to put kind of higher prices as a cost basis to businesses. But if this keeps going up, this is truly what is happening within businesses themselves, okay? So this is a good sign that we've began to peak here. And considering this has kind of been a long contractionary period versus the previous contractionary periods, this may mean that we might possibly take longer to reach the top of this particular channel. Yeah, that really does mean we might actually have, in conjunction with things like global liquidity, a much longer cycle. I mean, people are beginning to throw that theory around. I think it's too soon to tell for sure, but it's definitely on the cards, at least based on what some of these early indicators are showing. Again, this does change month by month, so don't go all in on one possible theory right now. Let's kind of see how this plays out from the current neutral period. I must say a big shout out to Real Paul, of course. You guys know who this man is. He's the one that brought me this ISM-PMI chart. I wouldn't have known about it without him, and looking more into it, I've become more and more convinced that it does have a big part to play in Bitcoin's possible forecast for the price. But also, one thing he's pointed out here that I do want to just remind you all of is that there are going to be massive pullbacks in this bull run. It's a narrative I've been saying to you guys now for a very, very long time. We knew coming into this cycle, we were going to have these massive drawdowns as we do get higher and bigger pumps. You've got to understand, we can't have life-changing gains without it. But I get it. A lot of you guys aren't too concerned with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not down all that much. It's altcoins, particularly because they've fallen so significantly. It's a bad feeling when you buy an altcoin and it's down significantly from a recent high. Okay, maybe you bought under here for $1.60. Maybe then you bought the dip at $1.30 and now it went to under $1, or even worse, render over here. Maybe you bought $10 or $13 or $11. Maybe you bought the dip over here at $4 or $5 and now it's at $3.60. When will it end? And I totally understand that feeling. But guess what, guys? The money that left these coins is likely on the sidelines ready to go. You don't need much money to move the price of these coins. Yes, theoretically, you would assume for render to 2x, you need to double the market cap. That is a fallacy. You need volume. For me to move the price of render right now up 2%, yes, up 2%, I'd need $500,000. As a matter of fact, at this current rate, it would pretty much require me to buy $25 million worth of render to move the price, at least on this pairing, a 2x. So you would need $25 million to, roughly speaking, move the price. I would at least say 30% here on render. So I get it, right? It's hard when you're being, sold and, it's come down and you're like, why did I buy this old coin? I have that feeling too, guys, but I've been in the market long enough to know patience is a virtue and you must understand sentiment versus catalyst. Sentiment is negative, catalysts are bullish. That means the sentiment technically is bullish, and it's just the way in which whales are playing this game here out. They can't handle you averaging in over here. They can't handle that because they're over here buying as well. They need to get you out of the market. You're on the sidelines ready to re-inject, even if you hate the market. Then they end up buying the dips. They push the prices higher. You FOMO back in substantially higher. Okay, and then they get out over here at a much more realistic level while you're holding the bag at the top or believing it'll go higher. They cannot, and I repeat, they cannot make their money if they don't convince you to buy their bags when they sell. They need to make you an emotional investor. They need to get you out. They need to get you agitated and pissed off down here or at the lows or even in sideways price action. And then so you will buy back in when they begin pumping the prices because all you know is up is good, down is bad, sell bad, buy good. Anyway, to move on, this decoupling of Bitcoin to altcoins is a chart that's been pushed around and I've addressed it a few times now, but this will be the final time I do address it in a video. So let me lay this to rest once and for all. Okay, alts are in this black line here and Bitcoin is of course in this gold line. Now, a similar pattern happens every single cycle where towards the top of the cycle, alts outperform Bitcoin. You can see back here, Bitcoin's down here, alts are up here, alts are up here, Bitcoin is down here. Then the tail end of the bull run usually has alts continuing their dominance over at least Bitcoin in terms of their overall price performance here, until eventually they fall down and somewhat sink. You can see they sink across over here. They actually sink more so over here this time. And then in the lead up to that next bull run, actually Bitcoin breaks above altcoins and then sort of like starts that charge. So of course you can see here what's happening is Bitcoin has begun to break above altcoins. This guy obviously has seen this and thought, well, it's decoupling, but you can kind of even see it back in this chart he's also shared here. This happens every single cycle. In the lead up, Bitcoin takes charge because, like I've said, they actually do follow this to some degree. If we zoom into Bitcoin, Bitcoin does like to go up here and alts tend to stay sideways here or not do as much gains until like the latest sort of point in the cycle where alts begin to really, really climb. We just have no idea where this bull run will take us, and we don't know at what period of time we are in right now. I mean, we very well could be back here. I mean, things look like they might actually inevitably lead that way, but as I said, like we could have been here right now. Again, no two cycles will ever be exactly the same again. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we'll be anything like 2021. I think we'll more so be like 2017. let's wait and see. Again, it's not over until it's over. And in my opinion, this is just one of the many ways that some of these influencers and these guys who do over-analysis tend to try to fit the narrative of the market. If it's bearish, they'll put out bearish posts. If it's bullish, they'll be overly bullish posts. Be very careful what you listen to. Always do your own research, and this is one of the ways you can, of course, do that. As a matter of fact, we are still due for our two usual major alt seasons, mid-year and end of year. And let me define alt season for some of you guys as well. Alt season really should be defined as a time in which not every single altcoin is going to pump, but altcoins do generally trend upwards. There is money flowing in alts, particularly the majors, right? Top 200 altcoins particularly. And we have clear narratives popping off. Clear narratives, gaming, AI, deep, and so on, taking precedence, those coins pumping up, likely sucking a little bit of liquidity out of the market, and then rotating into another narrative a month or a few weeks later. So I want to take another quick look here at the long and short-term holder on-chain cost basis. What this chart pretty much looks at here, if I zoom in, is in the red line, this is the average buy-in price on Bitcoin for short-term holders. So guys holding under 155 days. This also includes people like whales, market makers, so the manipulators, and us emotional investors. Okay, so this is also the blue line you can see here, but we'll come back to this chart here in just a moment. So that's this red line as well. Now, this orange line is the average investor in Bitcoin over the course of entire history, right? So it's the average person in Bitcoin's buy-in price. Right now, if I zoom out here and zoom into the current time, that current buy-in price is roughly speaking $44,000. And the blue line here is the long-term holders. So guys that own Bitcoin and haven't moved their Bitcoin in over 155 days. And what we like to see here is pretty much these long-term holders be in substantial profit at Bitcoin. You can see here at its all-time high. So back in 2017, these long-term holders roughly had a buy-in price of $500 when Bitcoin's all-time high was at $20,000. So they were up basically, what even is that, like a 40x or something like that? They're up an astonishing amount of money. Okay, now what happened when this blue line came up? That's essentially them taking profit, so selling their Bitcoin, bringing the price down, and then reinvesting back into Bitcoin, therefore increasing their average buy-in price. And this happens every cycle. So that's why this line actually starts off quite neutral and then really starts coming up towards the tail end of the bull run itself, because they've taken profit, okay, they've brought the price down, and they're also buying back in again. That's why we have these pink periods here, because this is where the short-term and the average Bitcoin holder, as well as these long-term holders, actually have price fall beneath, causing a fantastic spot buying opportunity. That's why this line is pink here. This has happened every single cycle. And as you can see right now, we're actually finding that the red line and the orange line are separating themselves. They're going up while this blue line is staying neutral, which is what we want to see. When this blue line starts going up, like you can see here, these guys are actually selling off their Bitcoin, which we can expect some price action to fall down. And therefore, of course, these guys buy back in again, bringing these lines together. That has not happened yet. We haven't even had this massive sort of extension period, which is what I'm personally waiting for. Moving more into the short-term holders, which is this blue line here, I think this is a great line to have a look at. You can see this red line here also represents the same thing, which is the short-term holder average buy-in price. So we have the red line here now being the higher deviation and the yellow line being the lower deviation. So again, in a weird way, kind of like price doesn't like being too far up or down from the blue line. Because again, it isn't just emotional investors here, it's the market makers, right? So it's the guys over here like Marty Party points out, which is Binance and Coinbase sending money and Sol and Bitcoin and Ethereum to Wintermute to trade. Okay, the actual ins and outflows of their holdings match up perfectly with the in and outflows within Wintermute. They're making a lot of money. That's why this red line here is a great level for us to assess as resistance, because when price is around there, these guys will definitely take profit off the table. Conversely, when price falls beneath the blue line here and we go to the lower deviation, these guys will buy the dip. You can see here, it is a great level of support. So considering that this chart hasn't updated to the current bloodbath we're seeing right now, I would suspect in the next day or two, we do see this chart particularly update and will be beneath the blue line here. But again, remember, it doesn't like staying beneath it for too long. As you can see back here in the bull runs of 2017, it is normal for it to dip, but not that long at all. Now, here's something to note. If we do fall down, and for some reason it is paired with macro news where we do have a flush down, expect a strong level of support you can see here to be at $72,000, which happens to coincide with a great level of support you can see above my head here at $72,000. We see it time and time again. It does happen. It is rare, but be prepared for that circumstance. The last chart I want to introduce you to here is the MVRV extreme deviation price bands. And to explain it, we have one main line we plot, which is this yellow line. It's essentially the mean or the average between the current price in black and the average person's buy-in price. Now, you can kind of see this relationship here. This is the realized value price, and this is Bitcoin's price. So it takes like the middle ground between these two and actually plots it on a chart here in yellow. The colored bands above and below it, the orange and red, and also the sort of greenish and the blue one, that's just the deviations. And these also prove to be great levels of resistance and support as well. Take this 2017 bull run, for example. Again, price doesn't like going beneath this mean, this MVRV line. And when price is above the red band, it doesn't like being there for too long before people take profit, particularly, as I said before, the short-term holders. And then it brings it back down within this yellow and red line, like within these two bands. Once we sort of have the end of the bull run, these bands go from a contraction into an expansion. They kind of fan out. And then we usually see the blue line here being a great level of support as well. So these deviation bands based on history have proven to be very, very effective at support and resistance levels. And as it stands right now, we've never been more contracted, I think, in Bitcoin's price ever. That includes any other bull run. This contractionary period in the lead up to the bull run has never been as tight. They aren't fanning, guys. It's not the tail end of the bull run according to this graph. As it stands, the current price has fallen beneath the mean, and we are now on this sort of turquoise line or just above it, which means we could fall to $86,000 as a level of support, or even go as low as $80,000, which is this last blue line level of support. And then worst case, as I say, we can possibly fall to $72,000. And just so this can really hit home, I've added these bands to Bitcoin's price, and you can just see how powerful they are as both support and resistance. For example, the turquoise line here actually was recently wicked and touched before price came back up again. The orange band here was a great level of resistance in which we pretty much peaked and came back down too. Even the short-term hold, the lower deviation band here, is a great level of support and prior resistance. Guys, I would highly recommend considering using these bands when looking into the overall outlook of Bitcoin's price and also short-term swing trading. Now, as for altcoins, pretty simple stuff. This is a great chart here by Titan of Crypto. And actually, since he made this chart a few days back, price has fallen beneath this line of support, but I do not think it is a time to be concerned. Look, we can draw a million things on a chart all day, every day. But guys, the market makers, the big boys, they have a paintbrush. They can move these charts any way they so wish with 10, 20, $30 million in a multi-billion or 100 billion market cap asset. As long as we can hold this line of support and break above this, it would be, of course, good to see us break out of this sort of ascending triangle here. Let's let the paintbrush paint and see what these market makers have planned. Guys, I wish you all well for this bull run, and you know that. I mean that. Obviously, if things turn bearish or I'm not as happy anymore, I will let you know that. But as it stands, I'm quite excited for what's to come, just a little bit burnt out. I must admit, I'm a little bit burnt out. Anyway, talk to you all soon.